So according to a previous video's comments, people like FaxDad or FaxDaddy for me. Someone else suggested FatherFax. I'm fine with all of them. It's up to you. The channel is here for your enjoyment. Someone else also suggested I keep the intros shorter so we can get right to the stories, so I'm not mad about that. Not the most insane comment. But, employers, what's the most insane complaint you've had about an employee that turned out to be completely true? Story 1. So I worked retail, and we got this guy named something like Gus. My boss tells me, hey, this guy's got anxiety. Go easy on him, okay? And so I was like, okay, that's cool. I get it. I can relate. I do everything I can to help him make sense of this infernal, godforsaken hellscape that is retail. It starts off with little forgivable things. Forgetting a task here, forgetting things there, accidentally giving the wrong info, and things like that. You know, newbie retail stuff like that. He quickly devolved in popularity as his complacency grew over time and his helpful attitude shrank. My guy started messing around during his shift, getting caught on his phone while ignoring backup cashier calls and things like that. He would make stabbing motions behind the manager's back to other employees, tell off new employees, and play it all off like he was some innocent dope who didn't know any better. None of this got him fired. Day after day, there was a new complaint from an employee about responsibilities he shirked, or a customer about blatantly wrong info like, oh yeah, we have another location up on the hill, and we didn't. No idea whose son he was, because that was apparently all kosher. What actually got him fired is the one day he brought a dog and a super expensive dog collar into work. He claimed he almost hit the dog on the way to work, and it was running around wild, etc., etc. He tried to sell the dog collar to a customer, then tried to adopt out the dog to a coworker. This coworker was competent enough to take the dog to a vet, whereupon they found a microchip and contacted the actual owners. That's where the fun started. It came out that Gus never found the dog at all. He straight up kidnapped this dog from his neighbor and tried to pawn it off, knowing full well what he was doing. The guy lawyered up immediately, tried to sue Gus, and threatened to sue the store and the store manager if Gus wasn't fired. Suffice to say, Gus was gone that very same evening. Nothing else came of it, but we talked about him for years and years. This is probably one of the better workplace stories I've heard in a while. Do you think this guy was related to someone in the company? It sounds like he got second, third, up to seventh and eighth chances on this job. How did he get away with kidnapping a dog from his neighbor? Did he have some sort of dispute with his neighbor? Was this some sort of weird plan for revenge? It would be even weirder if it turned out that this store wasn't a pet store. Story 2. I've got a lot of these. Customer complained that the employee was stealing. Didn't believe it at first. The gayest man I've ever known was stealing Playboy magazines. No idea why. Got caught with him. Multiple copies of the same issue. Fired. One employee was spotted by a customer pleasuring himself on the roof before the store opened. Also used a magazine. Didn't believe it. Staked out the roof. Turned out to be true. Fired. One customer told me the bookkeeper is up to something because she didn't get a receipt for a space she rented. Didn't believe it. Turns out, this employee was pocketing a few hundred at a time when a vendor paid in cash. Was doing all kinds of embezzling that wasn't easy to catch. Fired. Jailed. One customer walked in on an employee who was self-pleasuring. There was a lock on the door. Lock not used. Fired. Customers spotted a receipt showing a coupon when they paid cash. Coupon code should have been cleared out of the system years before. It was a 100% off coupon. This employee made an extra $100 or so per shift. Fired. Jailed. Mystery as to how they found the coupon code. One customer found a camera in the women's restroom. I knew right away who it was. Staked out the camera feed until I saw him go in. Fired. Jail. One customer was hugged by an employee. No idea why. It was the employee's first day. Fired. One customer spotted a security guard selling M substance to his friends. He had been selling M substance and other substances on his shift for over a year. Added bonus, when they got rid of him, thefts went way down. One customer complained an employee pointed and laughed when an old lady fell. Reviewed the tape. It was pretty pronounced. She had tripped on an end cap, fell, and wasn't able to get herself up. He was pointing and laughing for a while. When someone else helped her up, he was berated about doing nothing. Not fired, though. What is the turnover on this company? And what is this company doing anyway? Is this some sort of warehouse? There's just a lot of empty space where people think they can get away with anything. And where was this 100% off coupon? I'd like to know that mystery too. Who put it in there in the first place? Did they actually just get rid of it from the system? Story 3. Many years ago, the bookshop I worked at hired a new employee with terminal cancer. Very sad, since she was quite young. She wasn't around too much due to the chemotherapy, etc. But when she was in, she worked in the children's department. She was actually a pretty good children's bookseller and was a huge fan of a fairly major American children's author. She ran the UK branch of his fan club and knew him personally. He occasionally flew her out to the States for events. One day, she wasn't in, and all employees were called to a staff meeting. We were informed that she had passed away. There was a lot of sadness. Her close colleagues were devastated. Only a few days later, one of our staff happened to go into a branch of McDonald's in a nearby town. Guess who was working behind the counter? Go on, guess. Turns out she was never ill. She had made the whole cancer thing up, as well as faking her own perishing for reasons that we never really fully understood. The general consensus was that it started out as a way to connect with her author hero and kind of spiraled from there. In the end, she couldn't handle living the lie anymore, and so just up and had her mother tell people that she'd expired. And then got a job in Mackie D's a few miles down the road and was surprised when she found out. That was pretty what the hell sort of experience for us all. Only a few miles down? I know this is the UK, and sometimes distances between places are a little more insurmountable than in the US. I just couldn't believe that she would think just a few miles down the road, though, where she was working, would be enough to be hiding out. Did she even wear a wig at all or something? Don't even know. Story 4. I managed a girl who was a loose cannon. She was an alcoholic who had multiple appointments every week. Psych, physio, solicitors, all of it. She was constantly disappearing from work at random hours for like half a day, and as her drinking intensified, she would show up stinking of booze. I'm a former alcoholic and the same age, so I tried my best with her. Anyway, she was on the long stretch towards getting performance managed, but she sped it up herself. We shared a building with the council and knew all of the staff, including the council rangers who patrol the streets, give tickets, etc. One morning on the way to work, she saw a street sign she wanted to take to give to a friend. Cannot tell you why. She pulled a screwdriver from her bag, why she had it again cannot say, and unscrewed it while standing on a milk crate in front of one of the rangers. She brought it into the office, told everyone, asked another staff member to hide it for her in case a ranger came looking, then also put photos of it on Instagram with the office and company signage in the background. We had a meeting planned that day about her absenteeism, and she told me because she thought it was a good laugh. Anyway, it took a few days, but she quit when HR started investigating. Story 5. I just fired an intern because he thought it'd be funny to smack one of the girls on the butt. Upon further investigation, she had been having anxiety coming to work because he would ask all sorts of ridiculously inappropriate questions. For example, he asked her if she had a good weekend. She told him it was a good weekend, or some plain answer, and he then asked her if it was because she smashed her boyfriend a lot. Needless to say, her anxiety was warranted, and we fired him as soon as we could. The mood in my group seemed a bit more relaxed this week. I always hate this. There's the generic plays nice with others skill that's difficult to measure, but can absolutely tank a team's productivity and morale. It gets increasingly difficult to manage when the person is an otherwise good worker in measurable aspects and senior management/AR only have anecdotal things about the person being unpleasant to go on. Story 6. New hire. Kinda weird. Definitely suffering from a lack of social skills. Fast forward a few days, and a customer comes back to return a piece of merchandise, claiming when they got home, there was blood on it. We looked. Yep, that was blood. We looked up the transaction. Only about 45 minutes earlier. New hire had set it up. Went to find him, but he wasn't in his department. Not necessarily a big deal. We had to go back into the warehouse for stuff all the time. Went to find him. There he was, in the warehouse, cutting his wrists with a razor blade, bleeding all over the place. Hell, hope he's okay. I know the physical pain of cutting yourself. I accidentally sliced my thumb while I was cutting up foam core for an advertising presentation. The mental stuff I don't know about, but I really hope this person got the help that they really needed. Story 7. A chain restaurant here has a student discount of 30% off. One of the waiters, who was a student himself, would use his own student discount whenever a table paid full price in cash and keep the difference for himself. Only got found out because the head office emailed the manager to check why one student had eaten at the restaurant 5 times a day for the last few weeks. Man, if he just wasn't greedy and just used it on his most expensive table once every couple of days, he could have kept that going for years. Story 8. I, HR head, got a call from a spicy chat administrator, informing us our official account is unpaid. They will take legal action if we don't pay immediately. I thought it was a joke. Anyway, we did get a legal notice. Then legal and HR investigated. The spicy chat company sent a phone call copy. As soon as I played it, my HR lady screamed, "I know this guy! He works in the supply chain!" Later on, we realized we had an employee who used to make phone spicy chat calls using our company landline. We politely told him to pay up and settle the matter, then issued a final warning letter. Story 9. I work at a major retailer in Australia. Back in 2015, we got a tip from an anonymous customer that one of our managers was a child pervert and had groomed this customer's daughter years back. No one believed it at first, and the higher-ups did an investigation just as a formality. Turns out, terabytes of child porn was found in his possession, including some photos that he had taken himself. After that, we all had to undertake mandatory training on what to do if we suspect child perversion in a coworker. The idea someone had access to terabytes of child porn is horrifying and dispiriting. It takes a lot to fill up a 1 terabyte hard drive with games, let alone multiple pictures. No one wants this kind of accusation to be true. No one wants to deal with that. The fact that he thought he was bulletproof enough to have this kind of stuff in possession with him at work where it could be discovered by the higher-ups is pretty horrifying. Hope he got taken away for good. Story 10. That the guy was stalking a female employee. It was a 24-hour retailer and she was on a morning shift and he was on a night shift, so I just thought there was no way they knew each other. Then one day I was filling in for a different manager and he came into the break room and was taking pictures of the morning shift schedule. I asked him why, and he told me some story about another employee who just wanted him to send their schedule, etc. I came in on my day off later that week during day shift and caught him staring at her from a different aisle while she was stalking. She had no idea. He would follow her home and watch her house and all that. She was 17, he was 38. I called the cops and had him escorted off the property and helped her get in touch with the right resources for a restraining order. He ended up violating the order multiple times and is in jail, last I heard. That is scary. You are a rock star manager for figuring this out and following through to protect that girl. Story 11. Coworker worked some extra hours and didn't immediately get the money and was told it would be in his next paycheck. He decided to harass the supervisor about it daily. I'm sitting next to him and he's talking about calling a corporation to ask where the money is, and I advise him that's a terrible idea. Then he says he's going to call the corporate for the pay stub app we use to view our pay stubs and ask where his money is. I told him that was a stupid idea because they only give us pay stubs and at no point handle our money. He lost it. He misinterpreted and thought I called him stupid. He went on a rant saying he was going to unalive me, that if he sees me out of work, he's going to beat my butt, told me to clock out right now and walk into the parking lot with him so he can unalive me. I'm sitting as calm as can be, and sitting behind him is his shift supervisor, who is also calm, rapidly texting on her phone, looking at me. I leave and go work my shift, and 15 minutes later, I get a call asking about the whole situation by a higher-up supervisor. Turns out the supervisor was texting her boss what was happening in real time. I was asked to write a formal complaint because they've wanted to fire him for a while, and this was the best reason, but they needed a paper trail. I was more than happy to do it. Dude was crying in the office minutes later saying I should be fired too for calling him stupid. 3 weeks later, a coworker sent me a screenshot of a GoFundMe he opened up asking for $10,000 to buy hats because he was going bald. The nerve. Story 12. I was reviewing employee evaluations at a Fortune 500, and one of them complimented an employee for improving as he hadn't yet eaten any paste this quarter. So I go to the manager and ask if there's a way she can cut the insult. Manager: It's not an insult. I caught him eating paste twice last year. Wrote him up for it, too. He's the reason the folks in documents have had to switch to mucilage and rubber cement. Another one. Found on a comment card in our suggestions box was, "Improve your seafood selection. Your trout made me sick." We were a hardware store. The boss mentioned it at the next store meeting, laughing and taking bets on which customer left it and which store she'd mistaken us for. Marco, one of the assistant managers, got a really sour face. Boss: "What's the matter, Marco? Trout got your tongue?" Marco: No, but that might have been me. I told a couple of customers all about the fish I caught on my vacation, and one of them asked if I'd caught any trout. So he sold them some trout." There's a lot more gastronomical activity going on in this hardware store than most. The paste one is kind of unfortunate. It sounds like one of those weird habits that you hear about on TLC on one of those shows that they just haven't broken the habit of. The other one is kind of on the fence. Maybe he sold them the trout on his break or on his own time at lunch, but the customer didn't really get the message that this was not part of the hardware store. I can sort of believe that one. I wonder what the final judgment on that one was. Story 13. Working in a bank. Had a teller, about 19 years old, get ticked about the way a customer, retail store owner, would send in her deposits at the drive-up window. The teller complained about the customer on Facebook, tagged the lady personally, as well as the store. Customer called the bank and told me, furious of course. I told the customer we would investigate. I asked the teller. She straight up admitted it and said, "What's the customer or branch manager going to do about it? My grandfather is friends with the bank president." I called HR and the bank president at the conference. Girl lost her job within 15 minutes of me receiving the call from the customer. Breach of customer confidentiality in banking is a major law violation. I'd just like to say in my capacity as an official employee of at bank, curse at person. Like, how absolutely deranged do you have to be to not see how absolutely stupid that is? Story 14. had an employee that was actively robbing local banks on his days off. I believe he hit 8 or 9 different banks before he got caught. Found out about it during an early AM FBI raid of the employee locker/break rooms done in conjunction with a raid on his house. To say it was a shock was an understatement. He wasn't even in the top 20 of my list of potential felonious employees. After 5, you'd think you have enough to either quit the job or stop robbing banks, or both for that matter. Story 15. One of my current coworkers told me this story the other day. He used to be a manager at a fast food restaurant. He said that one night after a busy rush, a woman called his store to complain that her fried food item had hair all over it. The manager denied this claim and assured the lady that the food items had never been in contact with hair and would never have left the store in a dirty manner. He backed his store and employees all the way and insisted that the woman was mistaken. Upon further investigation, one of the kitchen employees admitted that she had dropped a food item on the floor that night and didn't want to risk having the customer wait an extra 5 minutes to make a new one. That reminds me of that scene from Fight Club where they got that guy hogtied in the men's room and they're just looking at him saying, "We serve your food, don't mess with us." Either that or that one South Park episode. If you know that episode, you know what I'm talking about. It's too gruesome to go into details here. Story 16. I was working for an agency in New York, and we went to a client meeting for starting a new project in Boston. One of the project managers who worked for the same agency in the LA office flew in from LA and joined us for the week-long meetings with the customer. Super nice guy who did his homework and gave really good presentations, and everyone liked him. After wrapping the meetings the whole week, I flew back to New York on Friday. The later week, there were supposed to be video conferences with the client, but they sent an email last minute saying that they're canceling all meetings. Well, none of us thought much about it and carried on with the day. In the evening, we got to know from our boss that the jerkwad sent his peen pics to a female employee who was our client. None of us could believe this, but it turned out to be completely true. My boss at a previous company got fired for something similar. He was a known sleazeball but could sell bacon to a rabbi. Hit on the VP of the client's company even after telling him she was happily married. He groped her, and she called the VP in a similar position at my company, and I had never seen someone fired so fast in an office position while remote.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 17. I knew a guy who worked at the subway back when they gave out stamps. Basically, for every 6 inches of sub you bought, you earned a stamp. And once you filled a card with 8 stamps, you could get a free 6-inch sub. So this guy started only giving stamps to customers who asked for them. If they didn't ask, he pocketed their stamps and grew a sizable stack of complete stamp cards. Then over time, he started cashing them in. When a customer paid with cash, he would ring it in as a freebie, place his own completed stamp card in the till, and pocket the cash. Customer got their sub, the subway's till was balanced, and he had an extra $5 to $10 in his pocket. Everybody was happy. He worked there for a few years, and word was he racked up a few $1,000s running this scheme. No idea if anybody complained or if he was ever caught, but he did buy a motorbike. That is genius. That's the kind of thing that a person could run for years and not get caught. It doesn't even sound like he did get caught, or it's not possible that he got caught. Did he get fired? Did he quit? Did he move on? This guy should probably be a part of that show that does extreme couponing. He could really rack up doing that. He could probably lead that whole TV show. Story 18. Our worker took a dump in the toilet of a vacant apartment that didn't have running water and then didn't say anything and left. They know they're supposed to use bathrooms in the offices or clubhouses because vacant units never have running water. The complex didn't find it until 3 days later when they brought a potential tenant for a walkthrough. It had been over 100 degrees all week. The woman I spoke to says there wasn't any toilet paper either. That last sentence makes it so much worse. I work security in Vegas at a few casinos. There was only one time I had to call the eye in the sky to inform them that a guest had taken a dump in one of the hotel room hallways. At least that was taken care of immediately. Ugh. Story 19. I was the head night auditor at an upscale airport property. Had a youngish night auditor who put a room into out-of-order status and let his friends in to party and have a multi-partner spicy event that he joined during his lunch break. He got caught because of a noise complaint. Police called. He was fired and blacklisted from being hired back. I hope he had a 1-hour lunch break. If he joined the multi-person spicy event for 15 minutes, that's kind of disappointing for everyone. Story 20. Had a new hire, as in less than a week on the job, at a movie theater where I worked as a supervisor. Throw a very loud, unbelievably childish tantrum in front of a lobby full of customers because her direct supervisor asked her to sweep up some popcorn that a customer spilled. She kept screaming, "I ain't cleaning up someone else's mess. Make them, the customer, do it." She was 24 years old. The meltdown she had when she got fired for her tantrum was nuclear, with lots of screaming and threats of how her parents were going to call the company and get all your butts fired. The next day, someone claiming to be her dad did call and tell us that we are going to rehire my daughter and apologize to her and fire, named her supervisor and manager, or else. But nothing more came of it. The top manager just laughed and hung up. I've yet to ever see such an epic, entitled tantrum before or since. My husband worked as a cinema manager. He once asked an usher to sweep up some popcorn that had been dropped. He took the broom, walked about 10 paces to the general manager, my husband's boss, and told her that she had to sweep it up as it was woman's work. Needless to say, he didn't last long. Story 21. I had a roommate who missed the city bus and then woke me up begging for a ride. I looked at the clock and said, "Hell, I think I can pull this off." Jumped out of bed, shorts, in the car, and we hauled butt at illegal speeds. I thought I got him there on time, aka like 9:55. Turns out he was scheduled at 9:30. But here's the twist. He clocked in. I guess I was scared of being late, so he left, took the bus home, and then called in sick. Yes, after he clocked in on the security camera. He could have just called in sick to begin with. Kind of you to at least attempt to help him. Story 22. Early in my Navy career, there was this kid whose after-hour stunts were absolutely legendary. A nice guy who always seemed to be smiling. The stories of his off-duty antics were just insane. Nothing criminal, just wild. It finally got to the point that his supervisor was concerned enough to refer him to mental health. This does not happen in the Navy. You will be hung out to dry or end up in jail long before anyone ever considers the mental health option. End result was that was the only guy I've ever known to be a medically diagnosed psychopath. They said I have an inability to experience human empathy. He had to go home. Knew a guy in the Air Force who got a similar diagnosis. Sociopathic disregard for his own safety and the safety of others. He was a great guy, as long as you were mentally prepared for when he decided to test out his new stun gun on himself. Story 23. Night shift at a packing line. We had 2 new temps, and they were polar opposites. One super bubbly religious guy who was pretty emotional, cried during his favorite songs. The other guy was grunge, pretty cynical, but a damn good worker. Well, they both ended up working on adjacent lines, and I was training them. Things were great till the bubbly guy decided it was his mission to befriend the grunge guy. Grunge dude wanted to be left alone so he could work, but bubbly guy kept going to our team lead to tell her he couldn't understand why grunge wouldn't be his friend. My team lead comes down and tells them to play nice and be friends. She was despised by most of our crew. She's oblivious. I told her that Bubbles needs to leave Grunge alone, but she wouldn't have it. Grunge walked out, and Bubbles cried for 2 nights straight, then never came back. Story 24. Used to work as a night auditor at a hotel, and one day I was told one of the daytime workers was fired. She was this really sweet older lady who worked part-time, and it was really hard to get fired there. So I was very curious. Several customers had complained, concerned that there was something very off about this woman. She was slurring and just seemed very off that day. Management was concerned, at first thinking there was a medical issue. After a few more incidents, they checked the cameras and found out she was taking shots of vodka throughout her shift. Like an absurd number of shots. I can't remember how much, but I remember being rather impressed that she could function at any capacity. Story 25. When I worked at Sam's Club, one of the cashiers pocketed a few grand from his drawer and put it on Facebook. We were in a new club, so if that much money went missing, it would have taken him a while to figure out. Or so I was told. One of the managers overheard, and they put two and two together. He got arrested and was fired. I know several people who have gotten fired for stealing because their drawers were short by hundreds of dollars after every shift. Like, don't steal, but if you're going to, just slip a 10 or a 20 every once in a while. Don't be so freaking obvious. Story 26. Had a coworker who always had a really strong stench and thought it was just bad BO. Turns out, she was addicted to mothballs and was licking them during working hours. The chemicals give off an unbelievably strong smell through your skin. We got complaints about her odor, but didn't take them seriously. Thought people were just being buttholes. Until someone saw her actively licking on the job. I had to Google this. Apparently, getting high on mothballs is really a thing. Wow, today I learned. Story 27. She left an unbelievable and unflushable gigantic turd both in and out of the toilet. I went into the bathroom to deal with what was surely an exaggeration and probably a nasty diarrhea mess. But no, there was a single, unbroken, enormous log that was hanging down over the outside of the toilet, going up over the seat and back down through the hole into the drain as far as the eye could see. All in one piece. Flushing had no effect. None. It didn't budge. It didn't wiggle. Nothing. Gravity didn't even pull it apart where it hung over the side of the bowl halfway to the ground. It was unbelievable. No one knew what to do. No one wanted to clean it up. Someone wondered aloud if we should send her to the hospital. Honestly, I can't remember what happened next. Only that there were tools involved. But I can still see that monster turd like it was yesterday. It was in 1997. I could never look her in the face again. I just kept wondering, how? Maddie, wherever you are, I hope you're doing better. Dehydration and constipation. Story 28. Huge, well-known international company. Young, straight-out-of-college guy just hired, as in first day the same week, who had moved from Eastern Europe to corporate location. Q company ski trip. Free booze. Some of his new colleagues/friends told him that this woman was checking him out. He wasn't exactly sober and started hitting on her. She told him to knock it off, that she wasn't interested. He kept being pushy. Large, scary dude beside the woman told him to knock it off. He swung at large, scary dude and promptly found himself face first in the snow. The woman in question? Head of global HR. The large, scary dude? Head of global corporate security. Ex-military. The young schmuck? Fired. Story 29. This definitely won't be as crazy as all the other stories and is definitely not even closest to the craziest person I've had to go to HR about or was called in to report on, but it really stuck with me. This guy was bullying another one really, really badly. Like American high school movies in the 80s badly. Why? He was from out of town. That was it. I thought there had to be more to the drama. Went to the place, interviewed a few people, watched it happen myself, and dang, yeah, it seemed like this guy could not take the fact that this kid in his 20s was from another state. I was absolutely expecting the sort of drama that building was more famous for. Baby daddies, sleeping with someone's wife, etc. Nope. This town ain't big enough for the two of us, but unironically. Story 30. Happened recently. Driving job. I don't really have to worry about the person recognizing this. He sucked so bad with computers that I nearly ended up with a manslaughter charge during onboarding. Okay, I get this person through onboarding. My boss and HR get him through orientation, and we send him out to train. Trainer comes in, exasperated. Dude can't drive, the easy part of the job. He can't secure cargo, the more challenging but still easy part of the job. He starts crying when driving. He ignores instruction. This goes on for a week. Trainer says he's not going to pass the guy. I tell my boss his options are to either have him retrain under another trainer, do a ride-along, draw his own conclusions, or term the guy. Eventually, my boss does the ride-along. The guy nearly causes a wreck while doing exactly what he was told not to do, with me in front of him not 3 minutes ago. During his ride-along, he runs 2 stop signs and nearly has a head-on collision. Boss wanted to give him another week as long as he didn't mess up his paperwork. This is my domain, and I've been known to make people reconstruct their entire day from scratch if they mess up bad enough. He proceeds to back out of the lot with both hands off the wheel. Yeah, that's it. Story 31. I was shift lead at a gas station, and I had a customer tell me that one of my guys, like 80 years old, told him to take off, eat poop, and die wussy, after the customer rolled his eyes at the price of cigarettes. I talked to my guy because I was sure that at very least the circumstances were different. Happened just like the customer said. My guy apparently didn't realize his speaker was still turned on and said it as soon as the customer's back was turned. Guy turned around, and that started an even bigger verbal fight. I was mulling over what to do about it, but the very next morning, an employee showed up drunk to work, yelling about a bonus check that they owed him, and he got fired. Story 32. We had this guy as a delivery driver. Super nice, quiet, never showed any signs of anger, even in stressful situations. We started getting calls, mainly from older women, that our delivery driver, we had our logo on both front doors, was cutting off, flipping off, and yelling at these women. I didn't believe it at first. I thought maybe they cut him off, he honked, they wanted him fired, so made up some big story. Then the back window got busted out of the vehicle. And then the radio looked like it got punched out for whatever reason. Everything came together and we found out he had huge anger issues. He stopped showing up, so it solved itself. But it was crazy how good of a front he put on. Story 33. She was peeing on the chairs in the office. No, she didn't have any sort of health issues. She just didn't feel like walking to the bathroom. As far as I know, she still works there. What? Story 34. Once, I had a coworker selling shrimp from the dumpster. Picked them out after brunches. Popped a few on a skewer and sold them in the bars that night. Got caught in a bar with a manager, and the CCTV caught him dumpster diving. They had him arrested. Good lordy, that's disgusting. Story 35. I had a number of complaints about a new member of staff. They said that she kept taking off her shoes, pulling dry skin from her feet, and eating it. I thought the staff were lying and being mean about her just because they didn't like her, until I saw her do it. She didn't finish the week. Dude, what the hell? Story 36. The cemetery director was selling plots, pocketing the money, $750, and selling the same plot to another family. The second family would show up ready to bury their deceased, only to find the grave already being used. He got away with it for a year. Story 37. Had a complaint that someone was driving one of our machines with a giant swastika on the side. Never in a million years. Went down, and there it was. Person was fired immediately, but he didn't care. Story 38. That an employee took a woman's phone number from her account at the store we worked at and called her. I never thought anyone was that stupid. Story 39. Local hardware store had an employee self-stimulating and putting it in a coworker's coffee. True story. People found out, and he was arrested.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.